Thank you. Thank you, Madam President. I come to the floor today to bring attention to the wildfires raging in our western states, devastating community after community. I'm also here to call on my colleagues to use the ongoing infrastructure discussions to take the swift, bold action necessary not just to confront the current crisis, but to address the root cause and help save others from having to endure similar fires and tragedies in the future. For nearly a month now, the bootleg fire, pictured here, has been the biggest of 91 fires burning across 12 states. It's been raging in southern Oregon. It's burned about 415,000 acres. Translate that into square miles, that's 646 square miles. Or translate that, that's an area about 20 miles wide and 30 miles long, half the size of the state of Rhode Island, reduced to ash and smoke. It's ranching country, not a lot of developed communities, but you still have a lot of homes getting burned, at least 161 homes. Double that, or roughly double that, in outbuildings. Hundreds of vehicles have been destroyed. Thousands of families have been forced to evacuate. This fire grew so large, it started generating its own weather system. Think about that. Usually we watch the weather to see how the weather is going to influence the fire. Will rain and storms slow them down? Humidity slow it down a little? Dry, hot conditions help them grow, or worst of all, hot, dry with wind? But that's not the case with the bootleg fire. It created these massive clouds rising more than 30,000 feet into the air. And as the air surges up, then below it, it pulls in air from all around, which feeds oxygen to the inferno. And then, when that air cools and drops down, it pushes the bottom air out, spreading sparks like some living monster, sucking in fire-intensifying oxygen and then spewing out fire-spreading embers as the air cools and descends. Even generates its own lightning storms and spawns fire tornadoes, swirling vortexes of heat and flame. Now, fires are an annual occurrence in Oregon, but decade after decade, they're getting a lot worse. Two major reasons for this. Climate chaos is one, and poor forest management is the other. The forests, due to climate chaos, they're drier, more prone to fire. And why are they drier? Because, well, carbon dioxide from burning fossil fuels and methane gas leaking out of our natural gas system. They're heating the planet. So we have to pivot quickly and transition to renewable energy to stop it from getting worse. But that's the discussion really for another day. Focus today on the second part of the challenge, which is forest management. When fires erupt, we put them out as fast as we can, trying to prevent devastating fires like the bootleg fire. But the result of putting out fires fast over decade after decade after decade is that a lot of fuels build up on the floor of the forest. In addition, we have a lot of forest that's second growth forest, and trees are planted very close together, and they all grow up at about the same height, so their canopies are touching each other. Makes it very easy for the fire to spread from tree to tree to tree. So you throw in the combination of longer, hotter, drier summers and second growth forests, and you've got a perfect recipe for infernos, like the big fires we've been seeing out west. To reduce the risk of these devastating fires in the short run, we have two basic tools. One is we reduce the grass and undergrowth that fuels the fire. We sometimes call that mowing. And then we do prescribed burns. And the second is we thin the forest. Now, thinning the forest works better in some forests than in others. Ponderosa pine, it works really well. You spread out those pine trees. They would never have grown so close together. In the old days, when fires regularly swept through, they would kill the younger trees. The older trees would survive. You have widely spaced trees that burn up the fuel on the floor of the forest, and it works well. Other forests, wetter forests, Douglas fir forests, other types of forests, we're still trying to figure out exactly the best way to do forest management to reduce fire risk. The bootleg fire did show the effect of these types of efforts. Over the last decade, ecologists have been working in the Sican Marsh Preserve. They've been thinning out the forest, and they've been using prescribed fires. So they've been reducing the number of ponderosa pines to making it a less fire-prone forest. And as the bootleg fire came into the preserve, firefighters on the ground reported the flames didn't jump as easily or readily from treetop to treetop. They went back to the ground. Going back to the ground where there'd been prescribed fire, they didn't burn as quickly. The fire moved a lot more slowly. And in addition, it's easier for the firefighters to get in to the front of the fire. So the thinning and burning in Sican Marsh Preserve are strong proof of why we need to use these tools, with science-informed adjustments resulting in the most effective strategies for different kinds of forests. But again, those strategies may not work as well in other types of forests, and we need the best science. And I've asked the head of the Forest Service, get us the best science so we can apply the best strategies to make different types of forests more fire resilient. But we need to be able to fund such efforts on a much more massive scale. You know, out in Oregon, we have 2.3 million acres that have been approved environmentally to be treated that aren't treated because we haven't had the funds. So this infrastructure bill, this is an opportunity to address so much of the work that needs to be done to make the forest more fire resilient. And, well, I'm pleased to say that the bill is going to have quite a bit in it. And I'm really pleased with this. I've been pushing for this for years, that we need to spend not millions, but billions of dollars in forest management. So $8 billion of wildfire-related funding is included. And that will help go out through the Forest Service and the Department of Interior. $2.4 billion for hazardous fuels reduction efforts. $2.1 billion for efforts to restore ecosystems on a broader scale in a fashion that will help reduce the vulnerability of the forest and other ecosystems to fire. $1 billion to help fund wildfire mitigation activities for at-risk communities. $650 million for rehabilitating areas burned by fires. $600 million to give firefighters the pay raises they deserve, to increase to a year-round workforce. You know, for years I've been saying one of the problems we have is a big attrition rate in our firefighters. They go out for a season, and then the job's over, and they have to find other jobs. And they find those other jobs, well, they aren't there to fight the fire the next season. Crew bosses are essential. You don't want to lose these experienced crew bosses. So what's the answer? Well, part of the answer is let's create year-round jobs with decent pay, so that when you're not doing firefighting directly, you're doing fire prevention by working on forest management projects. And I think that idea is starting to gain some traction. We also have funding in here to increase the collaborative forest landscape restoration projects, CFLR projects. Now, a CFLR, a collaborative, it brings together the stakeholders from every perspective, from the environmental side, from the timber side, from all sides in between, and they work out what they refer to as a prescription for a specific forest. And then they go out, and in the beginning, when they don't really have a great trust relationship, they go out together and they'll go through the acreage, they'll mark the trees. Then later on, as the trust grows, they write the prescription and they know it will get implemented as they desire. And they can get a lot more work done. And you know what? It means that this thinning operation, the forest treatment operation, stays out of the courts. And that is very important, because if we're just treating forests through timber sales that are always hung up in the disputes in the courts, we're not getting the job done. And this effort to increase the role of these collaboratives, it puts people in the room that have been traditional opponents, and they're talking to each other, and they're working out plans together, and they find out they actually sometimes like each other. So we need a lot more of these collaboratives. Now, we have in Oregon close to 24 collaboratives. only 4 federally funded. So by increasing the funding, we enable more collaborators to do a lot more work, and that would be a very good thing. I've spoke to the billions of dollars, but you know what? These couple $1 billion, it's not enough. I'll be introducing legislation modeled on the Great American Outdoors Act to fund $30 billion in hazardous fuels treatments across our public lands over the next 5 years. That's closer to the scale we need to undertake to manage these forests. You know, it used to be you thought about, well, when do I want to go out and hike on the Pacific Crest Trail? Well, August, least chance of rain. Now it's like, whatever you do, think twice about going in August because you'll be dodging forest fires. It's happened to my wife, Mary, and I a number of times now. We planned to hike in the southern part of the Pacific Crest Trail, and twice we had to move to the northern part. We hiked in the northern part twice and had to dodge forest fires. One time it was the fire that erupted and put the whole Columbia Gorge on fire. We had fireworks on the 4th of July. And then just last year, we were hiking starting on the Warm Springs Reservation, and other hikers said, hey, did you know that there's already a fire on the Warm Spring Reservation, right where we were? Well, the wind was blowing the other way. We hadn't smelled the smoke. You're out of cell phone range. You're up in the mountains. You hadn't heard that. But it reflects the fact that you have to worry now in hiking because the forest is so vulnerable. It's so dry. It so easily turns into a fire that can move very quickly, especially if there's a wind. I've worked to get funding for the National Guard to be able to help fight fires the last 4 years, including 1,500 members of the Oregon National Guard have been trained. They have been out helping on this bootleg fire, so that is great. We've been working to enable FEMA to deliver disaster assistance more quickly to the communities impacted by catastrophic fires. And we just have to recognize that we need to tackle the issue of smoke. We did used to talk about smoke in Oregon, but it was smoke from burning our grass seed fields, because the way to get grass seed very pure was to burn the fields every year, and so we'd have this haze throughout the summer. Well, it was very unhelpful to people's health to be breathing that smoke, so eventually we said, no, we're not going to burn the fields in that fashion. But now we have the smoke from the forest fires. And wouldn't you know, when I was home last weekend, I expected to see a lot of smoke. There was a previous moment where I drove 600 miles on the Labor Day fires last year. I never got out of the smoke, 600 miles. This time, I was in blue skies. And then I looked and saw the weather patterns were driving the smoke from our fires into Montana. And it was going up in the jet stream. It was swirling around. There was a lot of smoke here in D.C. for the fires out west. Well, so it is a national issue. In fact, I guess the index for air quality in New York City surged to 157, and anything above 100 is pretty dangerous. But that just shows the level of challenge that we're addressing. So we need to tackle the smoke, and it's why I'm introducing the Smoke Ready Communities Act and the Wildfire Smoke Emergencies Declarations Act. We need to recognize the threat exists not just from the fires, but also the impact of the smoke. The impact of the smoke on communities, so we need to have a way to respond and create a national emergency related to it. We need to prepare our communities to be ready for the smoke, to have some kind of air-filtered locations where people with asthma and other health care conditions can escape and get to clean air when the air quality drops so dramatically. And we need to protect our farm workers, so I'll be introducing the Farm Worker Smoke and Heat Protection Act. Now, we lost one of our farm workers due to heat. When this heat dome struck Oregon a couple weeks ago, there in Portland, where my house is, 116 degrees, plus a wind that was blowing that turned it into a hairdryer. You stepped outside, and you're just watching the plants just shrivel up. And we were fortunate. We converted our gas furnace to a heat pump so that we could heat our house with renewable electricity rather than fossil fuels. The side benefit is we got air conditioning. So we had air conditioning for the first time. But so many houses in Oregon don't have. Think about the impact of 116-degree heat in a place where it's rare to have a single day ever break 100 degrees during the summer. So we need federal standards related to smoke. We need to work with the Occupational Health and Safety Administration to ensure that farm workers get the assistance they need to be able to work safely. I can't underscore enough the importance of us coming together as a nation to tackle these western fires. At this moment, the fire season is just beginning in Oregon. It feels like we've been in it forever. It's just July. We got August, September, October. Well, we just turned the calendar on to August. August, September, October. We have fires starting early in the year, as early as March, burning late in the year. In California, it's a year-round proposition already, and Oregon isn't far behind. My fervent hope is that with fires engulfing Oregon and California and Idaho and Montana and others, it will be the wake-up call we need in this chamber to realize we have a responsibility to act, and to act quickly. We have an opportunity to make an impact, but we have to have the policy knowledge and the political determination to take that quick action. Thank you, Madam